Welcome to our podcast, where today we will dive into how technology shapes the way we think, learn, and live. Right now, we will be tackling a question that is becoming more and more prevalent in higher education. How does the use of artificial intelligence in college classrooms affect STEM students' learning and comprehension, and how will this overuse of AI eventually affect them in their postgraduate careers?
This is a really important question, especially now that AI tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and other learning assistants are so commonly used in college courses. Our research focuses on how these tools are changing the way STEM majors learn complex materials and the potential effect it will have on them and the population later in life.
At first glance, AI seems like a huge help. It can solve problems, explain concepts, and even write code, but the problem is that it can often create shortcuts. These shortcuts do not require students to apply critical thinking skills or expansive learning in order to answer complex problems. That brings us to our first key point. AI can hurt STEM majors because it allows students to skip the hard thinking. A source found through research says, first and foremost, excessive automation may lead to students becoming dependent on technology, which diminishes their motivation for independent learning. In such a dependency, learners may not recognize the necessity for in-depth analysis of information, relying on AI to solve problems. This source explains how AI use can turn dangerous if overused. The author goes on to say, furthermore, there is a risk of losing independent thinking skills. If students begin to use AI as their primary tool for problem solving, it may result in a decrease in their ability to analyze and critically evaluate information independently. Problems with thinking skills, critical analysis, problem solving, and so many more arise with the misuse of AI. This is so dangerous, especially with STEM majors, because they are going on to pursue careers where sometimes they may have to make life or death decisions. Without proper education, they won't be able to effectively do their jobs. When students use AI to get instant answers, they might finish their homework faster, but they miss out on the struggle that actually builds understanding. And in fields like engineering, biology, or mathematics, that deep comprehension is everything. As stated in research study, there is also a risk that students' ability to give machines tasks and cognitive processes can make them more dependent on technology while making them less able to do things themselves. Dependence on artificial intelligence poses risks on students' capability to learn and comprehend the material at hand.
Exactly. You cannot become a good doctor or engineer just by reading answers. You have to understand why those answers work. This then leads us to our next thought. How will the overuse of AI hurt STEM majors in their later careers? A new study found students' over-reliance on AI dialogue system, particularly those embedded with generative models for academic research and learning, affect their critical cognitive abilities, including decision-making, critical thinking, and analytic reasoning. These students graduate from university and are launched into high-stake jobs where analytic reasoning and decision-making skills are vital for success. Imagine a future doctor who used AI to get through their anatomy class without really learning the material, or an engineer who depended on an AI tool to design systems in college. And now these STEM graduates have to make critical decisions in real life without the same support. The stakes are so much higher and could literally be deadly.
While the integration of generative AI into medical schools and the medical field itself is becoming a widespread trend in the United States, researchers have expressed growing concerns about patient malpractice in the industry due to mistakes within these artificial networks. In a paper published in the Journal of Medical Education and Curriculum Development, researchers at the University of Ottawa conducted a survey among students from 6 different medical schools in the Greater Ontario region. When asked about generative AI usage, 78.9% of respondents reported using generative AI, with 53.0% identifying as frequent users. The study found that medical trainees can greatly benefit from generative AI to navigate the rigorous demands and abundance of information involved in medical training. However, the use of generative AI in medicine has raised concerns. The outputs can be misleading, inaccurate, or biased, posing risks to patient safety. The over-reliance by generative AI by learners may lead to plagiarism and a decline in critical thinking skills. Owing to these concerns, the use of generative AI in medicine must be cautioned and should be implemented in a manner that helps rather than harms clinical decision-making and improves patient safety. The article concludes that while AI can be neatly integrated into the medical field, students' over-reliance on the tool to perform complex tasks will have dire implications on the medical field.
That is scary to think about because it is not just about the individual careers at this point. It is about the careers those lives affect. This leads us to the question, what happens to society when we have STEM graduates who do not fully understand their fields? If doctors, scientists, or engineers are underprepared, it could lead to serious errors in medicine, unsafe designs, or slower innovation. Our daily lives depend on people in these professions doing their jobs with skill and confidence, and that means they need to truly understand the science behind their work.
If we wanted the next generation of scientists and engineers to innovate and keep us safe, we need to make sure they are learning and not letting AI do the learning for them.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Make sure to stay curious, stay thoughtful, and remember the smartest tool in the room is the human brain itself.